It was about 3 weeks ago on a holiday in Kenya. We had a little private time away together.
The morning light filtered through the stained glass windows of Kensington Palace as the world held its collective breath. At precisely 9 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time, the official social media accounts of the Prince and Princess of Wales flickered to life with an announcement that would dominate headlines across every continent. The photograph showed William and Catherine standing in the gardens of Adelaide Cottage, their Windsor residence, with 3 familiar faces beaming beside them and one new presence cradled carefully in Catherine's arms. The caption was elegantly simple, befitting the couple's refined approach to royal communication. It read, "We are delighted to introduce the newest member of our family. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are thrilled to welcome their sister, Princess Eleanor Mary Diana. Mother and baby are both doing wonderfully well." Eleanor. The name rolled across newsrooms and living rooms with the weight of history and the promise of the future. Not since the medieval Plantagenet queens had Eleanor graced the immediate royal lineage. The choice spoke volumes about William and Catherine's vision for the monarchy, reaching back across centuries to invoke a name associated with strength, diplomacy, and cultural patronage. Eleanor of Aquitaine, Eleanor of Castile, and Eleanor of Provence had all left indelible marks on English history, and now a 4th Eleanor would carry that legacy into the 21st century. The inclusion of Mary honored both grandmothers, a touching gesture that united the Spencer and Middleton family lines with the House of Windsor. Mary had been Diana's middle name, and it belonged to Catherine's sister Pippa as well, creating a bridge between past tragedy and present joy. The final name, Diana, needed no explanation. 15 years after William had placed his mother's sapphire engagement ring on Catherine's finger, their 4th child would carry forward the name that still commanded devotion and mourning in equal measure across Britain and beyond. The timing of the announcement caught even seasoned royal correspondents by surprise. Catherine had been notably absent from public engagements for the past 7 months, with Kensington Palace citing a desire for privacy during what they termed a delicate pregnancy. Unlike her previous 3 pregnancies, which had been announced early due to severe morning sickness requiring hospitalization, this 4th journey to motherhood had been shrouded in unusual secrecy. Speculation had run rampant throughout the summer and autumn months. Some tabloids questioned whether Catherine was actually pregnant at all, suggesting everything from illness to marital difficulties to explain her withdrawal from public life. Others pointed to her age, 42 years at the time of conception, and worried publicly about complications that the palace steadfastly refused to address. The silence from Kensington Palace had been absolute, neither confirming nor denying the rumors that swirled with increasing intensity as weeks turned to months. The decision to maintain such tight control over information represented a significant departure from royal protocol. When Catherine had been pregnant with George, Charlotte, and Louis, the palace had followed traditional patterns of announcement and update, providing regular bulletins that satisfied public curiosity while maintaining appropriate boundaries. This time, something had changed. Those close to the couple later revealed that the decision came from William and Catherine themselves, a united front demanding greater privacy than any recent royal parents had claimed. The photograph that accompanied the announcement deserved its own analysis. Unlike the formal hospital steps that had followed the births of their first 3 children, this image radiated intimate warmth. George, now 11 years old and already showing signs of the height he would inherit from both parents, stood tall beside his father. Charlotte, 9 years old, and every inch her great-grandmother Elizabeth, in composure and bearing, gazed at her new sister with an expression of protective adoration. Louis, 6 years old and still prone to the charming mischief that made him a favorite at public events, reached out one small hand to touch the blanket wrapped around Eleanor. Catherine herself looked radiant but different. The carefully maintained appearance she presented at official functions had given way to something more genuine, more vulnerable. Her hair fell loosely around her shoulders rather than being styled in the glossy waves the public had come to expect. She wore a simple dress in soft cream, devoid of the designer labels and precise tailoring that usually characterized her public wardrobe. This was Catherine as her family knew her, And the deliberate choice to present this version rather than the polished princess spoke to the emotional significance of the moment. William stood slightly behind his wife, one hand resting on George's shoulder, the other touching Catherine's back in a gesture of support that transcended mere posture. His expression combined pride with something else, something harder to define. Relief, perhaps. Gratitude. The look of a man who had weathered a storm and emerged to find sunshine on the other side. The palace had coordinated the announcement with military precision. Within minutes of the social media post, official statements were released to news agencies worldwide. The Prime Minister offered congratulations on behalf of the nation. The Archbishop of Canterbury announced that prayers of thanksgiving would be offered at services throughout the Church of England. Commonwealth leaders sent messages of celebration that reflected genuine affection for a couple who had worked tirelessly to modernize the monarchy while respecting its traditions. Yet beneath the carefully orchestrated celebration, questions lingered. Why had this pregnancy been kept so secret? What had prompted William and Catherine, usually so willing to share carefully curated glimpses of their family life, to withdraw so completely? And what did the choice of Eleanor, a name unused in the immediate royal family for over 7 centuries, signal about their intentions for the future? The hidden months? To understand the extraordinary secrecy surrounding Eleanor's impending arrival, one must look back to a cold January morning when Catherine first confided in William that she suspected another pregnancy. They had been married for 13 years, parents for 10, and had long ago indicated that their family was complete with 3 children. Louis's birth in 2018 had been followed by public statements suggesting that the Wales family had reached its intended size. The discovery that Catherine was pregnant again at 41 years old brought a cascade of complex emotions, joy mixed with apprehension. Both William and Catherine were acutely aware of the increased risks associated with pregnancies in the early 40s, particularly 4th pregnancies. Catherine's previous experiences with hyperemesis gravidarum, the severe morning sickness that had required hospitalization during her first 3 pregnancies, added another layer of concern. The decision to keep the pregnancy private came after a series of intense discussions that involved not just William and Catherine, but also their senior advisors and medical team. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the consultant obstetrician who had overseen Catherine's previous pregnancies, recommended an approach that prioritized Catherine's health above all other considerations, including public relations and traditional protocols. What the public did not know, and what the palace worked diligently to conceal, was that the pregnancy had been complicated from its earliest weeks. Catherine experienced spotting in the first trimester that, while not uncommon, raised concerns given her age and medical history. She was placed on modified bed rest, a restriction that made public appearances impossible to maintain without revealing her condition. The choice was simple: announce the pregnancy early along with its complications, or maintain silence and manage the situation privately. William advocated fiercely for the latter option. He had witnessed his mother's relationship with the press, understood how even well-intentioned public interest could become invasive and harmful. He remembered Diana's bulimia being discussed in newspapers, her every mood swing analyzed, her body scrutinized with each pregnancy. He was determined that Catherine would not endure similar treatment, particularly during a pregnancy that carried genuine medical concerns. The logistics of maintaining such secrecy in the modern age proved extraordinarily challenging. Catherine's regular appearances at school events with George, Charlotte, and Louis had to be carefully managed. The children were brought to Adelaide Cottage rather than Catherine attending events at Lambrook School. Public engagements were cancelled with vague references to scheduling conflicts or private family matters. The prince and princess's joint appearances became notably rare, with William often appearing alone at events that would typically have included both of them. The British press, usually voracious for royal stories, found themselves managing a delicate balance. Several editors received off-the-record briefings from palace communications staff, not confirming the pregnancy but making clear that Catherine's privacy was paramount, and that any intrusive coverage would have lasting consequences for media access. It was an unusual arrangement that reflected both the seriousness of the situation and the respect that William and Catherine had cultivated with certain media outlets over years of careful relationship building. Behind palace walls, preparations proceeded in absolute secrecy. The nursery at Adelaide Cottage was renovated by a small team of trusted craftspeople who signed comprehensive non-disclosure agreements. Baby clothes and equipment were ordered through intermediaries to prevent retail leaks. Even close friends and extended family members were kept in the dark for months, with William and Catherine choosing to share the news only with those whose support would be essential. King Charles and Queen Camilla were among the first to know, informed during a private lunch at Highgrove in February. Charles's reaction reportedly combined delight at the prospect of another grandchild with concern for Catherine's well-being. He had watched his daughter-in-law navigate the pressures of royal life with grace and determination, and he understood perhaps better than most the toll that pregnancy under public scrutiny could exact. He immediately offered his full support for whatever approach William and Catherine deemed necessary. Princess Anne, informed shortly after, proved to be an unexpected source of practical advice. As someone who had raised her own children with notably more privacy than Charles had managed with William and Harry, Anne understood the value of creating boundaries between public duty and private family life. She encouraged William to hold firm on the decision to maintain secrecy, regardless of media pressure or public speculation. The late Queen Elizabeth had known about the pregnancy before her death in September of 2022, a fact that added poignancy to Eleanor's eventual arrival. Catherine had confided in her during one of their regular private teas, seeking advice from a woman who had navigated 4 pregnancies while serving as queen. Elizabeth's counsel had been characteristically practical. Trust your instincts, protect your health, and remember that the monarchy had survived far greater challenges than a private pregnancy. As summer gave way to autumn, Catherine's condition remained stable but required ongoing monitoring. She developed gestational diabetes, a common complication in older pregnancies that necessitated careful dietary management and regular blood sugar testing. The condition remained unknown to everyone outside the immediate medical team and family. Another secret piled atop secrets. William found himself living a double life during those months. In public, he maintained the cheerful composure expected of the heir to the throne, attending engagements, delivering speeches, and representing the king at various functions. In private, he was a husband managing anxiety about his wife's health, and a father trying to help 3 young children understand why their mother's routine had changed so dramatically. George, old enough to grasp the situation's seriousness, took on an unexpected maturity. He helped with his younger siblings, ran small errands around Adelaide Cottage, and provided his parents with emotional support that seemed far beyond his years. Charlotte channeled her energy into preparing for the new baby, drawing pictures and writing stories about being a big sister again. Louis, struggling to understand why life had suddenly become so constrained, acted out in ways that required patience and gentle discipline. The family bubble that formed during those months created bonds that would shape Eleanor's entry into their lives. By the time Catherine went into labor on a November evening, George, Charlotte, and Louis were not just excited older siblings, but invested participants in their sister's arrival. They had earned their places in that first photograph through months of adapting to circumstances they did not fully understand, but accepted with remarkable resilience. The contractions began at Adelaide Cottage just after 7 in the evening, a timing that allowed for careful coordination without the chaos that might have accompanied a daytime emergency. Catherine, experienced in the rhythms of labor from her 3 previous deliveries, recognized immediately that this was genuine labor rather than false alarm. She informed William calmly, and he set in motion the carefully prepared plan that would ensure both medical safety and continued secrecy. Dr. Mitchell arrived within 30 minutes, accompanied by a small team that included a pediatric specialist and an anesthesiologist. The decision had been made weeks earlier that Catherine would deliver at home if possible, avoiding the media circus that inevitably surrounded royal births at hospitals. The Lindo wing of St. Mary's Hospital, where George, Charlotte, and Louis had all been born, would not witness Eleanor's arrival. Instead, a suite of rooms at Adelaide Cottage had been transformed into a fully equipped birthing center, complete with monitoring equipment and emergency protocols that could rival any hospital facility. William remained at Catherine's side throughout the labor, a steadying presence that she drew strength from as contractions intensified. Unlike his father Charles, who had famously played polo on the day of Harry's birth and maintained emotional distance during Diana's labors, William was fully present in ways that reflected changing expectations of fatherhood. He coached Catherine through breathing exercises, offered water and encouragement, and provided the physical and emotional support that turned a medical event into a shared experience. The children slept upstairs, unaware that their sister was making her entrance into the world just floors below. Maria Barallo, the family's longtime nanny, maintained the evening routine with practiced efficiency, ensuring that George, Charlotte, and Louis went to bed at their usual times. The household staff, winnowed down to only the most trusted individuals, moved quietly through their duties while history unfolded in the master suite. Labor progressed more quickly than anyone anticipated. Catherine, perhaps aided by the experience of 3 previous deliveries, moved through the stages with remarkable efficiency. By 11 o'clock, just 4 hours after the first contractions, Dr. Mitchell was announcing that it was time to push. William, who had witnessed all 3 of his previous children's births, found himself overwhelmed with emotion in a way that surprised him. This 4th child, unplanned and unexpected, had somehow become the most precious precisely because she represented a gift beyond what they had imagined their family would include. Eleanor Mary Diana entered the world at 11:43 in the evening. Her arrival marked not by fanfare, but by the quiet celebration of a family welcoming its newest member. She weighed 7 pounds and 2 ounces, a healthy size that reflected Catherine's careful management of her gestational diabetes. Her first cries filled the room with a sound that William would later describe as the most beautiful noise he had ever heard. Catherine held her daughter against her chest, tears streaming down her face as she examined tiny fingers and toes, the shock of dark hair, the scrunched face that all newborns wear. William wrapped his arms around both of them, forming a protective circle that enclosed this new life they had created. Dr. Mitchell and her team worked efficiently to complete post-delivery procedures, but the medical aspects faded into background noise against the profound moment of connection happening between parents and child. The decision about what to tell the children had been debated extensively during the pregnancy. Ultimately, William and Catherine chose honesty appropriate to each child's age. George had known for months that his mother was pregnant and that the baby could arrive any day. Charlotte had been told a few weeks before Eleanor's birth, given enough time to process the information, but not so much that maintaining secrecy became burdensome. Louis had been informed just days earlier, his 6-year-old capacity for keeping secrets being somewhat limited. At 6 o'clock the following morning, Maria gently woke the 3 siblings and told them that their sister had arrived during the night. The response was everything William and Catherine had hoped for. George asked immediately if he could see the baby. Charlotte wanted to know if their mother was all right. Louis, ever practical, wondered what they should call her since they had been referring to the baby as the new one for weeks. The family's first meeting happened in Catherine's room, with all 5 of them gathered on the large bed that had become headquarters for this new phase of their lives. George held Eleanor with surprising competence, his long arms cradling her carefully while he studied her face with serious concentration. Charlotte sang softly, a lullaby she had been practicing for weeks in anticipation of this moment. Louis peered at his sister with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism, not entirely convinced that something so small could be as interesting as everyone seemed to think. William captured photographs that would never be released publicly, images meant only for family albums and private memory. These showed the unguarded joy of siblings meeting, the exhaustion and elation on Catherine's face, the quiet pride in William's expression. These were the moments that mattered more than any official portrait or press release, the authentic reality of a family expanding and adjusting to accommodate new love. The decision about when to announce Eleanor's birth involved calculations that balanced multiple considerations. Legally, royal births must be registered like any other, creating a paper trail that determined how long secrecy could be maintained. Practically, staff and security personnel who had been involved in the birth represented potential sources of leaks. Emotionally, William and Catherine wanted time to bond with Eleanor before sharing her with the world, but they also recognized that delaying too long would create its own problem. They settled in for 48 hours, 2 days to exist as a family of 6 without external pressure, without cameras, without the weight of public expectation. 2 days to let George, Charlotte, and Louis adjust to their new roles. 2 days for Catherine to rest and recover before the inevitable media storm. 2 days that would have to last them a lifetime, because once the announcement was made, Eleanor would belong not just to them, but to the nation and the Commonwealth. The name's significance. The choice of Eleanor as the baby's first name represented months of deliberation and research that William and Catherine had undertaken in secret during the pregnancy. Unlike with their first 3 children, where names had been debated but ultimately selected from a relatively predictable pool of royal options, the 4th child offered an opportunity to reach deeper into history and make a more distinctive choice. Eleanor of Aquitaine provided the primary inspiration. Born in 1122, she had been Queen Consort of France and later Queen Consort of England, one of the wealthiest and most powerful women of the Middle Ages. Her story combined political acumen, cultural patronage, and personal resilience in ways that resonated with Catherine's own experience of navigating royal life. Eleanor of Aquitaine had been mother to 2 kings, Richard the Lionheart and John, and her influence on medieval European politics remained legendary nearly 9 centuries after her demise. Eleanor's commitment to the arts particularly appealed to William and Catherine, both of whom had made cultural patronage central to their royal work. She had supported troubadours and poets, helped establish the courts of love that shaped medieval literature, and maintained her intellectual engagement well into her 80s. For a couple who had championed causes ranging from mental health to environmental conservation to early childhood development, choosing a name associated with such breadth of interest seemed fitting. Eleanor of Castile offered another powerful historical precedent. Wife of Edward I, she had accompanied her husband on crusade, an unusual choice for a queen consort in the 13th century. When she died in 1290, Edward's grief led him to commission the famous Eleanor Crosses, elaborate stone monuments erected at each place her funeral cortege stopped on its journey from Nottinghamshire to Westminster Abbey. The crosses stood as testaments to enduring love and respect, qualities that William and Catherine hoped would characterize their own marriage and family. The inclusion of Mary as the second name carried layered significance that extended beyond simply honoring grandmothers. Mary had been Diana's middle name, but it also belonged to multiple queens in British history, including Mary I and Mary II. The name connected Eleanor to both the Spencer and Middleton families while maintaining ties to royal tradition. For Catherine, whose sister Pippa bore Mary as a middle name, this choice created a link between her birth family and her royal family that pleased her mother Carol enormously. Diana, as the third name, required no explanation, but carried emotional weight that could not be overstated. William had been just 15 years old when his mother died in that Paris tunnel, and the trauma of that loss had shaped every aspect of his adult life. His choice to give Diana's engagement ring to Catherine, to name their daughter Charlotte Elizabeth Diana, and now to include Diana in Eleanor's name as well, demonstrated his determination to keep his mother's memory alive for his children. The decision to make Diana the third rather than second name came after considerable discussion. William initially suggested Eleanor Diana Mary, arguing that his mother deserved prominence in his daughter's name. Catherine gently countered that Mary as the middle position created better flow and balance while still honoring Diana meaningfully. The compromise they reached satisfied both their desires to respect the past while creating something new. King Charles's reaction to the names revealed unexpected emotion. When William called his father to share the decision, Charles reportedly paused for a long moment before responding. The choice of Eleanor, reaching back centuries to invoke queens of genuine historical significance, aligned with Charles's own interest in history and tradition. The inclusion of Diana acknowledged a woman who had been his wife, the mother of his sons, and a continuing presence in the family's emotional landscape despite nearly 3 decades having passed since her demise. Prince Harry, informed of his niece's birth and name through a video call from California, expressed delight that rang genuine despite the geographical and emotional distance that had grown between the brothers. The inclusion of Diana meant that both William and Harry now had daughters carrying their mother's name, Charlotte in Britain and Lilibet Diana in America. It created a symmetry that neither brother had anticipated but both recognized as meaningful. The public reaction to the name Eleanor proved overwhelmingly positive, with historians and royal commentators praising the choice for its originality and depth. Social media exploded with discussions of Eleanor of Aquitaine and Eleanor of Castile, introducing medieval history to audiences who might never have encountered these figures otherwise. The name shot to the top of baby name charts within days of the announcement, with maternity wards reporting multiple newborn Eleanors across Britain. Yet not everyone approved. Some traditionalists argued that William and Catherine should have chosen a name with more recent royal precedent, perhaps Elizabeth or Victoria or Alexandra. Others suggested that Eleanor, despite its historical pedigree, sounded too medieval for a 21st century princess. A few critics implied that the choice was pretentious, an attempt to position Eleanor as something special compared to her siblings with their more conventional names. William and Catherine remained unbothered by such criticism. They had made the choice for private reasons that mattered to them, and the public's response, while gratifying when positive, would not alter their certainty that Eleanor was the right name for their daughter. In private conversations with friends, Catherine noted that Eleanor would have the freedom to be herself precisely because the name carried no recent royal baggage, no immediate comparisons to beloved grandmothers or great-grandmothers whose legacies might prove constraining. The initials EMED, Eleanor Mary Diana, were noted by several observers to spell no particular word or acronym, avoiding the clever patterns that some parents sought. This randomness felt appropriate for a 4th child whose arrival had been unplanned, whose presence in the family represented a gift rather than a strategy. The future unfolds. The weeks following Eleanor's birth and the announcement of her name settled into a rhythm that balanced public interest with family privacy. William returned to official duties after taking 2 weeks of paternity leave, a luxury his father's generation would never have considered, but which modern royal fathers embraced without apology. Catherine remained at Adelaide Cottage, recovering from delivery and adjusting to life with 4 children under 11. The decision about Eleanor's title had been made even before her birth. Unlike some European monarchies where only the monarch's children received royal titles, British tradition extended the style of Royal Highness and the titles of Prince or Princess to grandchildren of the sovereign through the male line. Eleanor, as the daughter of the Prince of Wales and granddaughter of King Charles III, was entitled to be styled Her Royal Highness Princess Eleanor of Wales from birth. This automatic status differed from the situation Prince Harry's children had faced. Archie and Lilibet had been born as great-grandchildren of the sovereign during Elizabeth's reign, meaning they were not automatically entitled to royal titles. Only after Charles became king did they technically qualify for prince and princess styles, though the decision about whether to actually use those titles had become entangled in the broader tensions between Harry and the rest of the royal family. For Eleanor, no such complications existed. She would grow up as a princess, though William and Catherine were determined that the title would not define her existence. They had learned from watching George navigate the weight of being second in line to the throne, from seeing Charlotte and Louis develop their own identities despite royal constraints. Eleanor would be 4th in line initially, though she would move down as George eventually had children of his own. Her position in the succession meant she would likely never reign, a freedom that paradoxically might allow her more genuine liberty than her older brothers would ever experience. The christening was planned for early spring, giving Catherine time to recover fully, and allowing the family to adjust to its new configuration before hosting the formal religious ceremony. The choice of godparents became a subject of intense speculation, with bookmakers offering odds on everyone from Prince Harry to Catherine's siblings James and Pippa to various aristocratic friends of the couple. William and Catherine remained silent on the matter, enjoying the privacy that came with not being required to announce such decisions until the christening itself. Eleanor's arrival prompted reflections on the changing nature of the royal family and the monarchy's future. With 4 children, William and Catherine had created a family unit that felt more substantial and less fragile than the narrow line of succession that had characterized previous generations. George would one day be king, but Charlotte, Louis, and Eleanor would form a supporting cast that could share the burdens of royal duty in ways that prevented any single individual from being overwhelmed. The gender dynamics within this sibling group also attracted comment. Charlotte, as the elder daughter, would grow up as a senior royal princess, likely taking on significant responsibilities as an adult. Eleanor, as the younger daughter, might have more freedom to forge her own path. The age gap between them, 9 years, meant they would not be direct competitors or companions in the way that George and Louis might be. Instead, Charlotte could serve as mentor and guide to Eleanor, creating a bond between sisters that transcended the usual sibling relationships. Catherine's experience as a mother of 4 would inevitably influence how she approached her royal duties going forward. The intense privacy she had demanded during the pregnancy suggested a woman who had learned to set boundaries and enforce them, even when doing so contradicted royal tradition and public expectation. Future palace watchers would need to recalibrate their understanding of Catherine, recognizing that the compliant, traditional Princess of Wales they thought they knew had evolved into someone more complex and self-assured. For William, Eleanor's arrival represented vindication of choices he had made about family life, despite pressure to conform to patterns established by previous generations. He had insisted on being present for all 4 of his children's births, had taken paternity leave, had prioritized family dinners and school routines over some royal engagements. The fact that he and Catherine now had 4 thriving children suggested that this more modern approach to royal parenting could coexist with fulfilling the duties required of future monarchs. King Charles watched his son's family grow with emotions that mixed joy with envy. He had not been present for William's birth, had maintained emotional distance during William and Harry's childhood in ways he now regretted. Seeing William actively engaged in fatherhood, watching George, Charlotte, Louis, and now Eleanor flourish in an environment of warmth and presence, reminded Charles of opportunities he had missed and could never reclaim. Yet he also felt pride that his son had learned from his failures and had chosen a different path that honored both royal duty and family commitment. The public's response to Eleanor evolved from initial excitement to genuine affection, as photographs and carefully released information painted a picture of a contented baby integrating smoothly into a loving family. The image of George holding his sister with such careful attention became iconic, shared millions of times across social media platforms. Charlotte's reported devotion to helping care for Eleanor sparked conversations about the special bonds between sisters. Even Louis's initial skepticism, mentioned in a television interview William gave to mark Eleanor's 1-month milestone, endeared the family to audiences who recognized the reality of sibling adjustment. As winter gave way to early spring and Eleanor approached her 4th month of life, speculation began about when the public might see more of her. The tradition of hospital steps photographs had been abandoned, but eventually William and Catherine would need to include Eleanor in official family portraits, would bring her to events like Trooping the Color, would allow her to become a visible presence in the way her siblings had. The timing and nature of these appearances would send signals about how the couple intended to balance Eleanor's right to privacy with the public's legitimate interest in a 4th in line to the throne. The name Eleanor Mary Diana would follow this child throughout her life, carrying the weight of history and expectation while hopefully allowing space for her to become her own person. Medieval queens and beloved grandmothers had shaped the choice, but ultimately Eleanor would define the name rather than being defined by it. She would grow up in a family that understood both the privileges and pressures of royal life, guided by parents who had worked consciously to create something healthier and more sustainable than previous generations had managed. In the private moments between public appearances, in the laughter echoing through Adelaide Cottage, in the ordinary routines of bedtime stories and family dinners, Eleanor finds her place. The crown's future brightens with each new generation that learns to balance duty with love. Subscribe to follow the continuing story of Britain's evolving royal family as Eleanor grows into her name and her destiny.